Be intentional. Take action now. Welcome to the Humanscape podcast, where we help business leaders develop the cultural landscape for tomorrow's success. In a world that is wobbly, we're here to help you create a strong cultural foundation for your business. And it's all about bringing your values to life, elevating people to perform at their best, creating a strong strategic plan, and offering lifelong learning opportunities. Are you ready to bring work to life and life to work? We are. Let's talk. We're back with another episode of the Humanscape podcast from HumanWorks 8. I'm Shawn Gallius, the Thought Catalyst with HumanWorks 8, and I'll be your host for today's conversation, but I'm co-hosting again with Sarah Marshall from the team. Our podcast exists to help organizational leaders like you prepare for the future of work now. In just a few minutes, you'll hear from today's guests, Peggy Williams-Smith and Christina Cooper from Visit Milwaukee. But first, let's hear a little bit about them.
Peggy Williams-Smith is a Milwaukee native and veteran of the hospitality industry who joined Visit Milwaukee as the company's first female president and CEO in 2019. Under her direction, the company has launched an exciting new brand for the first time in over 20 years. Her team has put together dynamic marketing campaigns to increase economic impact to the community and elevate the city's reputation. Peggy's focus on strategic partnerships has deepened the company's local connections while developing a nimble team that is more responsive than ever to changes within the travel and hospitality industries.
And now Christina, she's also a Milwaukee native and joined Visit Milwaukee team as Vice President of Human Resources in July of 2024. She leads initiatives to cultivate a dynamic and inclusive workplace culture, to enhance employee development programs, and implement innovative HR strategies that support the mission to promote Milwaukee as a premier destination. With over 20 years of extensive human resources experience, Christina has worked across a diverse range of industries. Most recently, she ran her own HR consulting business, specializing in recruitment, performance management, learning and development, compensation, and benefits. We're so excited. Peggy, you've been leading the team since 2019, and Christina, you joined during one of the busiest times in Milwaukee, the summer. I don't know about that, but both of you hold such critical roles, and we can't wait to hear your insights as we explore what's happening at Visit Milwaukee and what's on the horizon from both of your perspectives. But where I'd like to start is, what's one thing that we didn't mention from your bios that you're most proud of? It can be personally, it could be professionally, just something you're just really proud of in life or at work. Peggy, we'll start with you. What jumps out at you on that?
Well, I was a hardworking individual with just a husband and no children. And in 2016, my niece came over for dinner. She was 12 and said she was no longer safe at home and never left. So she's now 22. She's a senior at UWM. She's going to graduate with her degree in social work in May. Last night, she sent me the link to buy her cap and gown, which I could not be more proud of. So that is the thing I am the most proud of.
Peggy, as well you should be. You've already touched my heart, and we've only talked about introductions. So thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. I love that. And Christina, how about you? Something that we didn't mention that you're really proud of?
I have to say family. I came from a very challenging background, and I think that the stability that my husband and I have built for our family, we have 3 adult children, 30, 27, and 20. I'm really proud of the caring and loving human beings that they have grown into. And that was just a labor of love to come from the circumstances that we came from to create such wonderful human beings. Of course, I'm a little biased being mom, but I'm really proud.
As well you should be. As well you should be. And already I'm hearing a theme around when we talk with leaders around building strong cultures and really championing people, even from both of you right there, I'm hearing this whole thing about the care involved in that and how to really create safe and stable environments. And that's what workplaces should always be. We always say, whether it's in work or in life, you do it both places. Let's learn a little bit more about you, though. We like to talk about the three parts of the mind. We focus on looking at an individual through a cognitive intelligence lens, a personality, affective lens, and then just their natural instincts. So I'll start with you, Christina. What's one thing cognitively, what's a hidden talent, skill, something you're smart about that nobody would ever know? What comes to mind that way?
I don't know if it's something that no one would ever know, but I'm just kind of an analyzer. I love putting puzzles together, literally putting puzzles together. So it's not something I boast about. It seems like, and kind of an old soul type thing, but I love putting puzzles together. So, and that's literal puzzles and analyzing situations. So I often find myself the advisor to friends and family when they're dealing with situations.
I think that's a great one, putting puzzles together, both in real life and at work. And isn't that what life is about, is putting the pieces together sometime or finding the missing piece, Christina? I bet you're good at finding that missing piece as well. How about Peggy? Something you're smart about, Peggy?
I don't know if my team would agree, but I tend to have a pretty photographic memory. It's maybe both a blessing and a curse. Now, when I ask a question, I almost always already know the answer because I remember. And sometimes that can be frustrating when other people need time to go back and look. It's just something that I have been able to do. I write notes. I'm a voracious note taker. And by taking those notes, it helps me to remember. I never have to look back. I mean, now I have to a little bit. I'm getting older, so I do have to look a little now. But it's always helped me to remember by taking those notes.
I love that, Peggy. I wish I had that part of my cognitive being. Sarah will tell you I don't remember a lot.
It's okay. I've got a little bit of that, so I've got your back.
I surround myself with people with that cognitive ability, Peggy. That's what I do.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your personality, that affective part of your mind. And since we're talking with the team at Visit Milwaukee, I want to know, what's your favorite Milwaukee thing? Your restaurant, your place to go, your outdoor spot?
So if you were to ask me, I mean, this is like asking Christina which one of her children are her favorite. Everyone has different skills and different reasons why you love them. Milwaukee is an amazing place holistically. There are so many parts that make up what makes Milwaukee a completely amazing place to live, to work, to play, and to visit. You can start with our amazing accessible lakefront, our access to fresh water, our culinary scene, 17 James Beard nominated chefs. You can talk about us being the city of festivals and having festivals year round that celebrate the unique cultures that make Milwaukee who it is. I could go on and on and on. I mean, there is just so much to see and do when you're here. Our brew culture, and that's not just beer brewing anymore, it's also coffee. We have an incredible coffee scene. Anything you can think of. Our nightlife is amazing. We've got it all, and people are starting to take notice.
Great. And Christina, who's your favorite child?
Oh my gosh. They're going to be listening, but they already know I don't do a favorite. I love them all the same. And they all have their own unique personalities, and we have our own little hidden relationship. So
great. I love it.
And do you have a Milwaukee favorite, Christina?
I'm with Peggy. Our city is so phenomenal, but I'm gonna take it a step further. One of the favorite restaurants of mine, we actually talked about it in one of our recent staff meetings, is Momomi. I absolutely love Momomi, the soup dumplings. So if you haven't tried it, check them out. They're one of our partners, and they are phenomenal. The food and the services is just absolutely wonderful.
I second the motion. And you both thought I hope the questions will get easier. That might be the toughest question right there. Mm-hmm. And let's go to that third part of the mind, and maybe newer to both of you even thinking about that. But I like to look at people and really elevate them through their natural instincts. And so when you think about that, the question I like to ask about that, if you both had the freedom to start a project, to take action your way, how do you like to jump in and start working and start doing? If nobody is telling you how to do it, what's your most natural way? And Christina, what comes up to you? When you jump in and start something, how do you start it?
Analyzing.
I thought you might say that since it came up before. I thought that may come back.
Yeah. I like to do the research, figure out what's needed. to complete the project and then create an action plan. It's just how I approach things.
I love it, Christina. You're speaking your truth is what we always say. It's all about information and process for you is what I would say as you jump in. Peggy, any different how you like to jump in?
I'll give you an analogy. When I read a book, I read the first chapter and then I read the last chapter and then I read the rest of the book. I jump in, I go head first. I mean, I do look at data, obviously. I am so in tune with what our P&L looks like on a regular basis, but I do tend to act with instinct. That's why I have a balanced team.
Exactly. And that's why you laughed already. You know that in each other as far as your natural instincts, how they complement or how they really are in conflict. But we always say that conflict is a good thing on a team. As I like to surround myself with people that do it differently because then you get that added value. And I see that in both of you. You both took our Colby A assessment. Can't wait to share more about that because I think it really calls out what both of you said. You're both speaking to what that is, which I think is great. So I want to get in then, just learn a little bit about what you're both doing at Visit Milwaukee. And Peggy, we shared that you took on this role back in 2019. And have been in the role ever since then, of course. But, when you're jumping in and starting something new, what was something that really attracted you? Why this role? Why now? What about this role and what you're doing at Visit Milwaukee seems really aligned with your passions and your purpose?
So I honestly thought I would start and end my career with Marcus Hotels and Resorts. I loved what I did. I love working with people. I love working with customers. I really enjoyed it. This position became available, and I already told you that I took custody of my niece when she was 12, and at this point, she was in high school. I knew that we had her on the right path, and this was an opportunity for me to lead an organization. And I don't think that ever was going to be the case with Marcus Hotels and Resorts. And it was an opportunity for me to infuse what I wanted a culture to look like in the workforce, in the workplace. And I also, born and raised in Milwaukee, I spent a lot of time working with Visit Milwaukee in my previous roles. And this was an opportunity to showcase how wonderful our city is. When you lead in a way that talks about the positives, it does help people hear to understand the good things that are happening in the city. And I think that has been the biggest part of my job, is not just being outward focused. I have a team who does that. I have a sales team who's on the road every day. They're at trade shows, they're at sales missions. They're talking to customers about why they should come to Milwaukee. I spend a lot of my time and created position of community engagement and inclusion to make sure that we were telling the people here all the good things that are happening, because they're our best salespeople. If they love the city, if they're talking well about the city, then we'll start to see that pay off dividends in people wanting to come and visit here. So that is why I chose to apply for this job. And I have to tell you, it was the best decision I've ever made. This was the best job I've ever had.
Well, I feel that result. I don't know if that's not like hard data for you, Peggy, but I feel that in Milwaukee. And over 5 years, Peggy, in the role, still clearly meant to be. Christina, so we mentioned you joined the team just before Milwaukee hosted the RNC, so an incredibly busy time, and you were brand new to the team. What stood out most to you about the Visit Milwaukee culture when you first joined the team?
Yeah, so a week ahead of the RNC, I would say walking in the door, what stood out the most was how welcoming the team was, the hospitality and the passion. You know, brand new coming in, everyone was so open and warm. And the passion that I see today in those same individuals, I saw on day one. Just an authentic care exhibited through every person that I encountered was what I saw. A willingness to help, even at the VP level. Employees were, approachable and open. And that was something that really stood out, and just how team oriented everyone was.
What I love about that, and I'm sensing it, and it doesn't surprise me that I'm sensing it. You feel that inwardly, but it's also what you're doing outwardly. So those values and that kind of action is felt both ways for what you're trying to do for the community, as well as what's happening on the team. Peggy, so I want to go back to you. Christina felt all that. How did that come about? I mean, that doesn't just happen. It takes some really purposeful action thinking. And I know we spoke a little bit about that you had done some survey work and gathered feedback about what the culture was going to be. Anything that you can share with our listeners about actions you took leading this culture over the last years based on feedback that's helped create what Christina felt joining you last summer?
Well, when I first started, I met with every employee. At the time, there were nearly 50 full-time employees. And I spent my first 30 days interviewing every single employee for 30 minutes. And I gave them 10 minutes to talk about their job, 10 minutes to talk about what they thought we weren't doing right or what they needed to better do their job, and then how we could move forward. Because there was a lot of grumbling about the culture here at the organization when I first started. So, I was part of a company that has a long history. It's a publicly held company. And we did an annual employee survey, culture survey, and they had not done one. So I thought, what better way than to get anonymous feedback on a regular basis and then take action from that feedback. And what we recognized was that there were a lot of silos. That was pretty obvious just in my interviews, meeting with the senior team, that there were a lot of silos in the organization. And in order for us to work towards a common goal, we need to break down some of those silos. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. We still have to work on those every day. They tend to go away and then they form back again. So something that's it's constant for us, which is why I'm glad we have Christina on board to help move those things along. But some of the things we noticed right away was people didn't understand what other people's jobs were. Everyone thought that their job was the most important and that their job was the busiest, and didn't realize that everyone had requests coming in different ways, in different forms, and how could we interact together. So one of the things we started from that first survey was in every other staff meeting, and we do a weekly staff meeting, we would have every associate get up and present their job, what it is they do, so that people would understand exactly what their everyday look like. We also started an employee recognition program. It's a peer-to-peer recognition program where peers nominate on a quarterly basis, because we are small. In a lot of places that I worked in the past, it was a monthly event, but because we're only a little over 40 people, we implemented that so that every quarter they nominate someone who they think is doing an amazing job. And then our senior team is the one who votes on it. And again, to read how other people view themselves is pretty amazing. And I think it gives everyone a chance to say something nice about someone that they work with. And it's a program that I would never discontinue because I think it's incredibly meaningful.
You heard us talk about the cognitive part of the mind in today's 3 parts of the mind segment earlier in this episode. The only way to measure the cognitive part of one's mind is by taking the Kolbe A index. The Kolbe A isn't about personality or intelligence. It's about you in the zone, you adding your best value, you at your most creative, how you get things done when you're free to be yourself. At HumanWorks 8, we use the Kolbe A as the foundation to our talent optimization work with clients to help individuals and teams get the right people in the right role, build confidence, strengthen relationships, and improve performance. Want to know your unique result? Take the Kolbe A index and uncover how your mind naturally works for your best performance. Visit humanworks8.com/Kolbe, Kolbe, to learn more.
Your organization's guiding principles include honesty, integrity, unity, valuing diversity. And I'm hearing some of those things being just in the two, sharing the knowledge as well as then the recognition program, those support. And we always say, hey, you have to bring your values to life through the actions you take culturally in your organization. And I hear those in what you were saying there, Peggy. One of the things, moving forward that I saw that intrigued me around your values. Somewhere in my reading, it said unique unites. Peggy, Christina, I love that. We have a belief everyone's unique, but I love those two words together. How do you do that? How do you build that unity around uniqueness? Because I think sometimes organizations can think that could be a clash. Do you know what I'm saying? Uniqueness can be a challenge where you're saying it unites. Christina, any thoughts on that? What's your perspective as you move that forward in the organization?
I don't think that uniqueness and uniting should clash in any way. And I think that Peggy has done a phenomenal job in structuring a committee. We have a Unique Unites committee that's designed to make sure that the organization has a voice representation from each department. We come together and make sure that voices are heard and there's representation around diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. So we come up with unique ways to bring those differences into the organization and celebrate those differences with our employee population, recognizing different cultural initiatives, making sure that there's volunteerism, and making sure that people's voices are heard. Milwaukee is a very diverse and inclusive city, and we represent our city in every single employee that walks through our door and offers the wonderful service that's exhibited through the booking rooms and tourism and sales and events. Everything that we do to grow our city is exhibited through the unique touch that each one of our employees extends. So it's not something that I think divides. I think uniqueness should draw people together.
I really like that, Christina. We talk about building unique ability teams and bringing the best. There's power in that. There's such strength in that, and how good cultures. And it sounds like you're doing that inwardly, but I love how that also applies. I'm going to say it again, outwardly, to how you celebrate the uniqueness of Milwaukee. You both couldn't pick out one thing you like because you love all that uniqueness that is out there. And then you want to celebrate them all with that same energy, which I think is fantastic.
It was actually born out of an ad campaign. Our ad agency at the time, it was coming out of COVID, and we thought potentially we'd have the opportunity to broadcast a live commercial during the Democratic National Convention in 2020. And we worked with the team, our team internally as well as externally, to come up with something that would be able to showcase how amazing the city was. We didn't get the opportunity to do that during the DNC, but we did a few months later have the opportunity to air those commercials during the Bucks playoff run and the championship run. And we loved it so much. The team really connected with those words for exactly the reasons Christina just said, exactly what both you, Shawn, and Sarah said. They connected so deeply with the way those two words combined that it became an internal process for us as well. But it did start as an outward ad campaign to try to put under one umbrella everything that Milwaukee is known for. And the commercial was just so funny because you would see the symphony, but then you'd see Sister Strings. Then we would see a pro basketball player, but then you'd see our female roller derby team. It was just showcasing how unique Milwaukee is and how as Milwaukeeans we embrace that uniqueness.
Yeah, we always say the language of an organization should make people say, I want to work there. I want to be a part of that. And to me, those two words made me feel that way about Visit Milwaukee. So I congratulate both of you just to keep those alive, because I think that's a powerful expression of what it means to be in Milwaukee, to be a human, to be working, whatever it might be.
We're talking about celebrating uniqueness, celebrating individuals. I'm just curious, what's one of the most creative or meaningful ways that you've celebrated your team, your employees at Visit Milwaukee?
Yeah, we find ways to make sure that we're weaving in celebration, whether it be individual handwritten birthday cards from senior staff to every person who's celebrating a birthday, as well as their anniversaries. We talked about our peer-to-peer employee recognition program, which is a way we celebrate people every day. We put our team up for awards that gain local recognition as well as national recognition. That's not just the senior team. We also look beyond the senior team to make sure that if there's an award that we see that someone fits into those categories, that we make sure to nominate them. But then we also, like I said, we have a weekly staff meeting and we celebrate the wins in that staff meeting every single week as well.
It feels good to work at Visit Milwaukee. That's what I'm hearing. Wow. I want to shift over a little bit and we talked a little bit about values, but you also have what you call rules of engagement. So we often work with organizations to create these. Sometimes we call them ground rules. We see how valuable that it is to have that brief set of expectations that are really clear across the organization. So can you tell us about how the rules of engagement came to be and how they're used at Visit Milwaukee?
As I said, when I first started, there were some issues in the organization and it had caused some leaders to be let go. And it was a lot of talking behind each other's backs and not talking to each other. We knew that if you're looking only at your department, you're not thinking in the best interest of the entire organization. And although not everyone is tasked with being in charge of the entire organization, it is your job to bring your best authentic self to work every day and to help everyone else to achieve what they can achieve. And everyone's role is dependent on one another in our organization, right? We don't exist without human resources. We don't exist without finance. We celebrate sales because sales is the one who gets the signed contracts, but they don't get that without marketing, writing the ads, or shooting the social media at those meeting planners. All of it is 100% dependent on another. So making sure that people understand that there's principles that we need to follow is something that we will lean back to or point back to when we're having coaching and counseling conversations.
So you have these ground rules, you've tied it back. You probably use them for recognition, you use them for performance management, all of these people touch points. So then they become a part and they're really brought to life, not just on a piece of paper, but they're active. And I love that you're doing that. Looking ahead, Christina, you're new in your role. What's on your horizon around culture and people for Visit Milwaukee?
Visit Milwaukee has a great culture, as you have heard. So for me, it's about continuing to enhance an already great culture. And that's through continued feedback, 360 feedback, for lack of a better term, making sure that we're engaged with the heartbeat of our employees, allowing them to have a platform to share their thoughts, taking that information and making sure that we're, putting positive changes into action. A big passion point for me is health and wellness. As you know, that's, one of those terms that is highly discussed amongst us HR professionals, but it's really important. There's a crisis when it comes to health and wellness. And I want to make sure that, our employees are well taken care of and there are resources in place so that their needs are met. So that's something that I'm really passionately looking into. And then also, as we look at, staffing, we want to make sure that we're supporting the initiatives and goals of each individual employee at Visit Milwaukee. So that may be developing them here at Visit, but if they have aspirations to move beyond, we care enough about our people to help them along the way, wherever that takes them.
Christina, there are a couple things you said. First, I love when we're talking to different organizations, this theme of developing employees, even though they may leave at some point. I'm seeing that as a trend in a lot of our podcast conversations, Shawn. So I want to call that out. I think that's really cool that you're focusing on that or that you've got that mindset. And then one other thing you said the heartbeat of employees, Christina. And sometimes we talk about things like pulse surveys, like we want to get the pulse of the organization. But I think I'm going to change my language and start using heartbeat because it sounds so much better. It's better than a pulse. It's the same thing, right? But the way that you said it, I think it just elevates that language a little bit and changes the perspective just enough. So thanks for talking about that, Christina, especially the focus on well-being as you go into what's next for Visit Milwaukee.
On that too, Christina, is there one you talked about, you're looking at resources, and I know, as you said, it can be very unique based on individual as far as needs. But is there a topic area or a theme that that you want to pursue that others may say, oh, I need to look into that area too? Is there anything, a focus area that you'd want to call out for our listeners?
I think for me, it's a matter of finding really strong resources for mental health I'd have to call that out as a touch point. And on a lighter side of it, this is just something that I've been thinking of. I haven't taken action on it yet, but pet care is something that I'd like to explore in a little more detail. We have pets that are extensions of our family. So thinking about resources around that, because we know when our family members are taken care of, we do better at work. And our pets are extensions of our family. So that's something I'd like to explore moving forward for our team as well.
I love those. So before I wrap up with some highlights, is there anything, Peggy, Christina, that we didn't ask about around people, culture that's happening at Visit that you wanted to share?
I was just at a conference this past week with my peers from across the country. And, this is it's a challenging time in our world, in our country, not, in our country specifically at this point. And there are a lot of feelings. When Christina was talking about mental health, I learned a lot of people are struggling on one side or the other, regardless of what your political affiliation is. And I think that's hard to manage through right now. It is heavy, it's deep. There are deep-seated feelings on both sides. And that is something that I don't think in my over 30 plus year career that I'd had to spend so much time talking about politics. And the old saying was, you don't talk religion or politics. There is no choice but to talk about it at this point. And I think that is the biggest challenge to lead through right now, is what is happening and how both sides feel. So something that we'll certainly be focused on how we can make sure that it doesn't embed its way into the organization and create friction.
I love that, Peggy. We are hearing that as far as those conversations, whether it's tied through ERG groups like Christina mentioned earlier that needs to come up. And organizations are trying how to create that space for that safely and well. And I think it takes leaders with a lot of great facilitation kind of skills and able to sort of help people through that. And then it really is that lesson of just listening first and pausing before one reacts, is what we always say. And I see nods from both of you, so I bet you're both leading that way as well. It's so easy to react to things, and we're really training leaders to sort of take that step back, that space, grace, whatever word you want to use. That's the kind of language we're using. So Peggy, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that is something people are dealing with, feeling, trying to get their heads around on how to lead best through it. There was so much that we talked about, but I want to end with some highlights. We started around talking about how complementary instincts or ways of leading are really important for a team. You need those, you need to bring those out, because you need all those sort of bests in people to really move a team forward. So that jumps out at me as one thing that came out. Another thing that came out, when you were talking, Christina, about joining, is how to create a welcoming culture. And I kind of like this. It's a culture with hospitality. I don't know if people would call their cultures. I think it comes natural to both of you, what you're doing with Visit Milwaukee, but I want to pass that on to listeners. Can you create a culture that has a sense of hospitality? I'd want to be there. So that jumps out at me. Couple actions you're taking is around breaking silos, this cross-functional knowledge of individuals you mentioned. And I think organizations need to step that up, because so often, whether you're big or small, there's ways to do that, ways to share what people are doing and highlight those things. It's almost like you're creating a large mentoring program where you learn about every part of the organization so you can best understand it, represent it, recognize it, and utilize it well. And then two last things. One was you said about recognition. You said daily celebration. That came out of both of your mouths, I think, at least once, about celebration. And I think that's a lot. That might be a big lift for everybody. But in a way, there are only so many moments in a day, and you can find a moment to celebrate somebody or celebrate a team or celebrate an opportunity. So I want to highlight that, because it may seem big, but when you break it down into small moments, everybody can find those daily celebrations. And then, going back to that heartbeat of an employee, I think that all comes down to the uniqueness of the individual. So that unique unites discussion. How do organizations bring that alive in their teams and their organizations, or find ways to really highlight that? And then finally, it's all about just making everybody aware of what's going on in Milwaukee. Oh my gosh. And just sort of say, hey, you need to get here is what I heard, whether that's to join the Visit Milwaukee team or whether that's just to join all of us, Sarah, all four of us, as we celebrate the good things that are happening in Milwaukee. So I know, Peggy, Christina, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about you? Where, if somebody wanted to find out more about either one of you or Visit Milwaukee, where would you guide them?
www.visitmilwaukee.org. It's got everything. You can find out all the events that are happening in Milwaukee. You can look for a restaurant you want to eat at, what show you want to go see. You can find out more about us on our About Us page. Everything you need to know is on visitmilwaukee.org, but you can also find us on our social media channels that are really quite popular. We're an influencer in our own right. So you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, all at Visit Milwaukee.
And if you're heading to the website, you've got to carve out some time. I was on the website and I got lost in it in the best way. There were so many good things to explore and just a great, Peggy, I have to commend you on the whole branding project because I think it all came together very well and the website is great.
Well, thank you. That is not me. That is the team. That is their, I set forth a vision, but I'm not the planner. They were the ones who did the hard work to make sure that as we went down that branding process, we were inclusive and we were representative of the entire city, which is why it took so long. It took over 2 years, but it was well worth the wait.
It was worth it for sure.
And I just want to thank you both. You want to celebrate this vibrant city. And what I heard from both is just a vibrancy in both of your efforts around people and how you're celebrating those and making the Visit Milwaukee team the strong team that it is to celebrate our city. So thank you both. Thank you all. And everybody have a great day. We look forward to you joining in the conversation next time. Remember to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and learn more at humanworks8.com/podcast. And if you want to know what I'm wondering about each week, subscribe to my Wondering Wednesday newsletter on LinkedIn. Reach out to us if you need a partner to navigate your humanscape or a speaker from our team who will inspire your people and challenge your leadership. It all starts in one moment. Let's bring work to life and life to work together. You got us.